I think we're very close to a turning point. The whole thing has been growing by leaps and bounds. Back in 2009, when we were first taking on the FDA as our opponent, there were very few of us. But as more and more people saw what these can do and have jumped on the bandwagon, so to speak, the size of the marketplace in terms of vendors, it's growing tremendously. The number of vapors is growing tremendously, and I think it's going to reach a point where they're just going to be laughed at if they get up there and say, well, those things are no good, they don't work. Well, yeah, what about us, 2 million people out here who don't smoke anymore? The big thing we have to watch out for is if the FDA decides to issue what they call a deeming regulation. The Tobacco Act only covers combustible cigarettes and smokeless tobacco products like chewing tobacco and snus. It doesn't cover pipe tobacco, it doesn't cover cigars, it doesn't cover e-cigarettes, but there's a little provision built into that law that says that if the Secretary, and they're referring to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, deems that some other product should be covered under the Tobacco Act, they can, put out such an announcement. And then once that goes through, they can just begin regulating the products. Now, the danger that we have is if the FDA decides to take advantage of that little thing and says, we're now going to be regulating electronic cigarettes. If they implement it exactly as written, the way it's written to cover the original products was any product that was not being sold in February of 2007 cannot be sold. Yeah. The really important thing is ears to the ground out there. There's only 10 of us at the moment, and that's not enough people to cover 50 states and Lord knows how many municipalities. So if people just kind of watch what's going on in their own community, and if they see something about a smoking ban coming up, we need to take a look at that and make sure that they haven't snuck in e-cigarettes under that definition of smoking. And when they're holding a hearing on whether to allow indoor use of e-cigarettes, for example, if people show up and tell their stories about how it affected their smoking, that they've been able to quit smoking, and how it's affected their health, then when somebody shows up from the American Lung Association and says, oh, these things are bad for you, well, they're not going to be automatically believing them as well as the people from their own community who've said, these helped me. Another thing we're doing is trying to combat the disinformation campaign that the people who are against the concept of tobacco harm reduction have been putting out. And they're using the same tactics against e-cigarettes that they used against smokeless tobacco. Most of us who quit smoking using e-cigarettes were just absolutely astonished when we found out that we could have quit smoking years ago had we known that smokeless tobacco products such as snus, which is discreet, it doesn't require any spitting or anything, is actually a whole lot less harmful than smoking, perhaps less than 1% of the hazard level of smoking. And if we had known that, instead they're saying, well, these things, will give you mouth cancer and oral cancer, and come to find out, well, no. Actually, the odds are very, very, very slim. The modern products they're not risk-free. Nothing that has nicotine in it is 100% free of any sort of risk, but they reduce it so much that if people find they cannot stop smoking because they can't do without nicotine, maybe they can stop smoking if they have nicotine from a safer way of delivering it. CASAA.org is our website, and there's just a host of information on there. We hold bi-monthly meetings, that's twice a month. On Sunday nights there's a virtual member meeting where the people who attend are given updates of what's going on legislatively and so forth, and also can put their own input in and ask questions of the board members who are running that meeting. Good to see you again, Kevin.